At 3:47 in the morning, Claire Mitchell's heart stopped beating. She was 8 months pregnant with twins, dying on an operating table. And her husband? He had ignored 31 phone calls from the hospital. 31. But here is what makes this story unforgettable. While Claire flatlined, while her babies fought for their first breath, her husband Derek was 12 miles away, watching the hospital's number flash on his screen and choosing to silence it. Because he was busy, drinking champagne with his pregnant mistress. But the man who saved Claire's life that night, it was not her husband. It was her husband's biggest enemy, a billionaire who showed up when no one else would. What happens next will make your blood boil, break your heart, and then put it back together stronger than before. This is not just a story of betrayal. This is a story of a woman who was left for dead, who lost everything, and who burned her husband's entire world to the ground. She did not wait to be rescued. She rescued herself. And by the end of this video, you will have the exact playbook she used. Because if you are watching this, you might need it too. Value statement. This story carries a powerful message. You do not need a billionaire to save you. You do not need a perfect support system. You just need one thing: the decision to choose yourself. The meaning of this story is simple, but life-changing. Strength is not about enduring abuse in silence. Strength is about knowing when to walk away and having the courage to rebuild from nothing. If even one woman watches this and realizes she deserves better, then this story has done its job. At 3:47 in the morning, Claire Mitchell woke to a pain so sharp it stole her breath. She gasped, reaching across the bed for her husband, Derek. Her fingers found only cold sheets where he should have been sleeping, blood. She could feel it, warm and wrong, soaking through her nightgown. Claire was 34 years old and 8 months pregnant with twins. She had been waiting for this moment, dreaming of it, planning every detail of her baby's arrival. But not like this. Never like this. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand, her hands shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. She called Derek. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then his voicemail, that cheerful recorded message she had heard 1,000 times before. Hey, this is Derek Bennett. Leave a message and I will get back to you. Claire tried again and again. Each unanswered ring felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. Something was wrong with the babies. She could feel it in her bones, that primal maternal instinct screaming that her children were in danger. She needed to get to the hospital. She needed Derek. But Derek was not answering. Claire dragged herself out of bed, leaving a trail of blood across the hardwood floors they had picked out together 3 years ago. She found her keys, stumbled to her car, and somehow managed to drive herself toward County General Hospital. 2 blocks from the emergency room, she crashed into a fire hydrant. The impact was not hard enough to hurt her, but hard enough to stop the car completely. Claire pushed open the door and collapsed onto the wet pavement, her pregnant belly pressed against the cold concrete. A security guard found her there, unconscious and bleeding, and carried her inside. In the emergency room, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. "We are losing her," someone shouted. "Page Dr. Harrison now." Claire drifted in and out of consciousness. She heard fragments of conversation, terrifying words like placental abruption and emergency cesarean and fetal distress. And through it all, one thought consumed her. Where was Derek? Where was her husband? Nurse Rebecca Lawson recognized Claire the moment they wheeled her in. Becca had been Claire's best friend since kindergarten. They had grown up together, shared secrets, stood at each other's weddings, and now Becca was watching her best friend die on a hospital gurney while her twins fought for their lives. Becca grabbed Claire's phone from the bag of personal belongings and started calling Derek. "Call 1. Voicemail. Call 2. Voicemail. Call 3, 4, 5. Nothing. By call 10, Becca's hands were shaking with rage. By call 20, she was crying. By call 31, she understood something terrible. Derek was not coming. In desperation, Becca called Derek's mother, Margaret. The older woman answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep and annoyance. "What is it?" Margaret demanded. "It is Claire." Becca's voice cracked. "She is dying. The babies are dying. We have been trying to reach Derek for over an hour. Do you know where he is?" Margaret sighed, a sound of pure irritation. "Derek mentioned Claire has been dramatic lately. The pregnancy hormones, you know. He probably just needs some space from her constant demands. I am sure she is fine." "She is not fine." Becca was shouting now. Her heart stopped. "The twins might not survive. Where is your son?" "I do not keep tabs on my adult child." Margaret's voice went cold. Perhaps if Claire were not so difficult, Derek would actually want to be around her. "Good night." The line went dead. Becca stared at the phone in disbelief. Then she made a decision that would change everything. She scrolled through Claire's contacts until she found a name that made her pause. Nathan Cole, the Billionaire tech CEO. Derek's fiercest business rival. The man Derek called his worst enemy. 6 months ago, at a charity gala, Nathan had given Claire his business card. Derek had made a scene about it, accused Nathan of hitting on his pregnant wife, but Becca remembered what Nathan had actually said to Claire that night. "If you ever need anything, call me. I mean it." Becca called him. Nathan Cole answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. "Who is this?" "My name is Rebecca Lawson. I am a friend of Claire Mitchell. She is dying. Her twins are dying. Her husband will not answer his phone. I did not know who else to call." There was a pause. Then Nathan spoke, his voice hard and certain. "Which hospital?" "County General. I am 11 minutes away." Nathan Cole arrived in 9 minutes, still wearing his tuxedo from the charity event he had been attending. He walked into the emergency room like a man who expected the world to bend around him, and it did. The hospital administrator tried to stop him. "Sir, you cannot just walk into the surgical wing." Nathan did not slow down. "I am on your board of directors. I donate $2 million annually to this hospital. And right now, a woman is dying because her husband is too busy doing God knows what to answer his phone. Do you want to be the person who explains to the press why you let her die over paperwork?" The administrator stepped aside. In the operating room, Dr. Harrison was preparing for an emergency cesarean. But there was a problem. "She cannot consent," the doctor explained. "She is not conscious. We need her husband's authorization or a medical power of attorney." Nathan pulled out his phone, already dialing his lawyers. "Get me emergency medical power of attorney for Claire Mitchell. I will take full legal responsibility. File it now." "Sir, that is not how this works." "Then we will discuss how this works while this woman and her babies die." Nathan's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. "Or we can save their lives and sort out the paperwork later. Your choice." The surgery began, and 12 miles away, in an upscale restaurant called Chateau Laurent, Derek Mitchell raised a glass of champagne. Across from him sat Vanessa Harper, 28 years old, his executive assistant for the past 14 months. She was beautiful, attentive, and 6 months pregnant with his child. Derek's phone lit up on the table. "County General Hospital." He silenced it without looking. "Should you get that?" Vanessa asked, frowning at the screen. "It is just Claire." Derek waved dismissively. "She has been calling all week about contractions. The doctor said it is normal. She just wants attention." He poured more champagne. Vanessa's hand rested on her pregnant belly. The phone lit up again, and again, and again. Derek turned it face down. "Now, where were we?" He smiled at Vanessa, that charming smile that had won Claire's heart 8 years ago. to us, to our future. They clinked glasses. At 4:23 in the morning, Grace Eleanor and Henry James Mitchell entered the world. 4 pounds each, tiny, fighting, alive. Their mother survived by the thinnest of margin. Blood transfusions, emergency interventions, a medical team working frantically to save her life. And their father never answered a single call. Claire woke to the sound of beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. Her first thought was of her babies. Her second thought was of Derek. "Where is he?" Her voice came out as a ragged whisper. Becca sat beside her bed, dark circles under her eyes, still wearing her nursing scrubs from her shift that had ended 12 hours ago. She had not left Claire's side. "The babies are okay." Becca squeezed Claire's hand. "They are in the NICU, but they are fighters. Grace is 4 pounds 2 ounces. Henry is 4 pounds even. They are breathing on their own." Relief crashed over Claire so hard she could not breathe for a moment. "And Derek?" Becca's expression changed. Something shuddered behind her eyes. "He called back once, around 5 in the morning. I answered your phone because you were still in surgery." "What did he say?" Becca could not meet her eyes. "He said you always make everything about you. That you probably exaggerated to get attention." Then he hung up. Claire's monitor beeped faster, blood pressure spiking. "Show me my phone." Becca hesitated, then handed it over. One text message from Derek, sent at 5:47 in the morning, while Claire had been unconscious on an operating table, while her babies had been fighting for their first breaths of air. "Claire, I cannot do this anymore. I have been unhappy for years. I have met someone who actually appreciates me. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. Please do not make this harder than it needs to be. Derek." Claire read the words 3 times. They did not become more real. "There is more." Becca's voice was barely a whisper. "I am so sorry, Claire, but there is more." She pulled up a photograph on her phone and turned the screen toward Claire. Derek. A woman Claire vaguely recognized as his assistant. Champagne glasses raised in celebration. The woman's pregnant belly clearly visible under her dress. Both of them smiling, like they did not have a care in the world. The timestamp on the photo read 4:02 a.m. The exact moment Claire's heart had stopped beating. "If you are wondering how we know the time," Becca said quietly, "a man named Nathan Cole had someone taking pictures." He suspected something was wrong with Derek's behavior at the gala earlier that evening. Nathan Cole. Claire remembered the business card, the scene Derek had made, the quiet sincerity in Nathan's voice when he said to call if she ever needed anything. He saved my life? He signed the consent forms when Derek would not answer. Becca's jaw tightened. "He has been here all night. Refused to leave until you woke up. He is in the waiting room right now. Why would he do that? Because someone should have been here." And he was. The door opened. Nathan Cole stepped in, still wearing his rumpled tuxedo, exhaustion written across his face. But his eyes were sharp, focused. "Mrs. Mitchell?" He stopped at the foot of her bed. "I am sorry we are meeting under these circumstances. You saved my babies. Your friend called me," I answered. He shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world. "But there is something you need to know. My lawyers have been looking into your husband's finances. Why would you do that?" "Because when a man ignores 31 phone calls while his wife is dying, there is usually a reason." Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolled through documents. "What we found is bad. Very bad." The financial bomb exploded across Claire's consciousness. Joint savings account, $487,000, now zero, withdrawn 3 months ago. Derek had forged her signature on the withdrawal forms. Their home, mortgaged 3 times over. All forged signatures, all without her knowledge. Credit cards opened in her name. $340,000 in debt she had never agreed to. A secret LLC in Vanessa Harper's name, funded entirely with money stolen from Claire. total damage, $2.1 million in debt she had never agreed to. He did not just leave you, Nathan said quietly. He financially destroyed you first, deliberately, systematically, so you would have no resources to fight back. Claire stared at the documents, the numbers blurred through her tears. How could I not know? You were pregnant with twins, exhausted, trusting your husband. Nathan's voice held no judgment. That is not a character flaw. That is being human. I have nothing. The realization crashed over her. I have 2 premature babies in the NICU and no money and millions of dollars in debt and nowhere to live, and he just... Claire could not finish. You have options. Nathan sat down in the chair beside her bed. I bought all of Derek's debt this morning. Every dollar. It is mine now, which means you owe me, not a dozen different creditors. Why would you do that? Because Derek should not win, and because you deserve a fighting chance. Nathan met her eyes. I am not asking for anything in return. I am asking you to let me help you fight back. Claire looked at this stranger who had shown up when her own husband would not, who had saved her life, saved her babies, and was now offering to save her future. I need a lawyer, she said. My own lawyer, not yours. Someone who works for me. Nathan almost smiled. I know a few. I will give you a list, and I will pay you back. Somehow, someday. I am not a charity case. I know you are not. That is why I am here. Claire looked at the photograph on Becca's phone one more time. Derek smiling, champagne raised, while she died. Something inside her hardened. Find me the most ruthless divorce attorney in this state, she said. My husband thinks he broke me. I am going to prove him wrong. 3 days later, Claire sat in a hospital conference room across from Patricia Delgado, a 58-year-old divorce attorney with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation that made opposing lawyers physically flinch. Everyone called her Patty. Or the pit bull. Sometimes both. 23 years I've been doing this. Patty flipped through the documents Nathan's team had gathered. Your husband is not special. He is a textbook, covert narcissist who thinks he is smarter than everyone. My favorite kind to destroy. Can we win? Patty looked up. Honey, your husband handed us a gift-wrapped case. Forged signatures, hidden assets, secret girlfriend, abandonment during medical emergency. The only way he could make this easier is if he confessed on live television. Claire almost smiled. Almost. I took your case pro bono, Patty continued, not because of Nathan Cole's money, because I have seen too many women destroyed by men like Derek, and I am tired of watching them win. Over the next week, Claire built her team from her hospital bed. Between NICU visits, between trying to breastfeed premature babies who could barely latch, between crying when no one was watching. She filed for divorce. She filed for emergency custody. She filed fraud charges. And then something unexpected happened. Vanessa Harper reached out to her. They met in the hospital cafeteria. Vanessa looked terrible, pale, exhausted, her pregnant belly straining against her sweater. I know you hate me, Vanessa said. You should hate me, but I need you to know that he lied to me too. Claire studied the woman who had been sleeping with her husband, who had gotten pregnant while Claire was pregnant, who had been drinking champagne while Claire bled out. What did he tell you? That you were abusive, controlling, that you trapped him with the pregnancy. Vanessa's hands shook around her coffee cup. He showed me texts, messages from you that were cruel and manipulative. I know now that he faked them, but I believed him then. I believed everything. Why are you telling me this? Because 3 days ago I found something. Vanessa pulled a folder from her bag. Bank records. Derek has been moving money to an offshore account. He is not planning to stay with me either. He is planning to disappear, leave both of us with nothing. Claire looked at the documents, transfer records, flight itineraries, a lease for an apartment in Costa Rica, a country with no extradition treaty. Derek was planning to run. Leave Claire with the debt. Leave Vanessa with a baby. Vanish. "Why should I trust you?" Claire asked. "You should not. But I am giving you this anyway because I am done being his victim." Vanessa met her eyes. "And because if he disappears, my baby has no father and no child support. Our interests align, even if we hate each other." Claire took the folder. Armed with Vanessa's evidence, Patty moved fast. Emergency divorce proceedings. Asset freeze before Derek could run. Temporary custody order giving Claire full custody of the twins. The judge granted everything. Claire stood outside the courthouse, her baby still in the NICU, Becca beside her, and for one beautiful moment, she believed it was over. "You won," Becca said. "He cannot touch you now." But Claire was wrong. So wrong. That night, she got a call from the hospital. The twins. Something was wrong. She raced back to find Grace struggling to breathe. An infection. Common in premature babies, but deadly if not caught. The doctors stabilized Grace. Crisis averted. But then a NICU nurse pulled Claire aside. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. A man was here earlier today. Said he was the baby's father. We let him into the NICU." Claire's blood went cold. What did he do? He just looked at them, held Grace for a few minutes, took some photos. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Was that not okay? Derek had been alone with her babies, while she was at the courthouse, while she thought she was winning. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Nice try, Claire. But you forgot that I always have a backup plan. See you in court." Oh, and Grace looked so peaceful sleeping. Fragile little thing, is she not? Claire collapsed against the wall. Her babies were not safe. Derek could reach them. The restraining order was not finalized yet. She called Patty with shaking hands. "He filed a counter motion 2 hours ago," Patty said grimly. "He is claiming you are mentally unstable." Postpartum psychosis. He has an expert witness, a psychiatrist who is going to testify you are unfit. That is insane. I am not. It does not matter what is true. It matters what a judge believes. Patty paused. The psychiatrist he hired, she is his mother's best friend. They have been planning this for months. The victory had lasted less than 12 hours. And the war was just beginning. The first catastrophe came without warning. Derek's lawyer subpoenaed Claire's medical records. Everything. Including therapy notes from 3 years ago when she had been treated for anxiety after a miscarriage. Claire had never told anyone about that miscarriage. Not even Becca. It had happened early, only 8 weeks, and she had grieved alone because Derek said it was not a real loss, not worth talking about. Now her private pain was being read aloud in a courtroom. "Mrs. Mitchell has a documented history of mental illness," Derek's lawyer declared. She admitted to her therapist that she sometimes felt overwhelmed and not good enough. Is this a stable environment for newborn twins? Claire sat frozen. Her most vulnerable moments. Her secret grief weaponized against her. Patty objected. Overruled. The damage was done. That night, Claire learned a lesson she would never forget. Anything you tell a therapist can be subpoenaed in a custody battle. Anything, and it will be used against you. The second catastrophe was worse. Derek's team called character witnesses, former co-workers who testified about Claire's erratic behavior, neighbors who described her emotional outbursts, friends or people she had thought were friends, painting a picture of an unstable woman obsessed with control. One by one, people Claire had trusted said terrible things about her, but the worst was Margaret, Derek's mother. Claire has always been unstable, Margaret testified. her voice dripping false concern. She isolated Derek from his family, controlled the finances. I believe she deliberately got pregnant with twins to trap my son, and now she is using these babies as weapons. Claire wanted to scream. Every accusation was projection. Every terrible thing Margaret described was something Derek had done to Claire. But Patty had warned her. Any emotional reaction would be used as evidence of instability. So, Claire sat silent and took it, and felt herself shrinking. During a recess, Becca leaned over and whispered, "If I went to jail for punching Margaret in her smug face, would you bail me out?" Despite everything, Claire almost laughed. "I would represent you myself. You are not a lawyer. For Margaret's face, I would learn." The third catastrophe nearly broke her. Vanessa did not show up to testify. Claire's entire case had been built around Vanessa's evidence. The offshore accounts, the flight plans, the proof that Derek was planning to flee the country. Without Vanessa, they had nothing. Patty made calls, finally got through. Vanessa's voice on the phone was flat, dead. "I cannot testify. Derek knows things about me, things that could destroy my life. If I help Claire, he will release them." She hung up. Claire stared at the phone, her star witness gone, her evidence inadmissible without Vanessa to authenticate it. Derek had planned this, compromised Vanessa before Claire could use her. The judge ruled on temporary custody that afternoon. Joint custody. Derek gets weekends. Claire's knees buckled. She grabbed the table to stay upright. "Your Honor, he abandoned them during a medical emergency." "Mrs. Mitchell, this is a temporary arrangement pending full trial. Mr. Mitchell has rights as a father. Unless you have evidence of immediate danger to the children, my hands are tied." She had nothing. Vanessa's evidence was locked away. Derek's charm was working. The system was failing her. She would have to hand her babies to the man who left them to die. That night, alone in the small apartment Nathan had helped her find, Claire sat in the dark and let herself fall apart. The twins slept in their cribs. Grace and Henry, 4 weeks old now, growing stronger every day while their mother grew weaker. Claire had spent everything on legal fees. Job applications were rejected because she could not commit to a schedule with infant twins and court dates. Food stamps were pending. Her pride was in shreds. She had been so sure she could win, so certain that truth and justice would prevail. She had been a fool. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. "Is this Claire Mitchell? Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Sarah Coleman. I was Derek's therapist for 2 years. Claire sat up. "I did not know Derek had a therapist. That is intentional. He made me sign an NDA. But what he is doing to you, I cannot stay silent anymore." Claire held her breath. "I have seen this pattern before," Dr. Coleman continued. "Your husband has narcissistic personality disorder, classic presentation, charm, manipulation, financial abuse, victim playing. If I can give you one piece of advice, stop trying to make him understand. He understands perfectly. He just does not care. Your job now is not to fix him or explain yourself. Your job is to survive him and document everything." "Why are you telling me this? Why risk your career?" "Because I have watched him destroy other people and said nothing." Dr. Coleman's voice cracked. "Because silence makes us complicit, and because there is something you need to know about narcissists. They cannot resist showing off. Somewhere, someone has heard Derek brag about exactly what he did to you. Find that person." Claire thanked her and hung up. Then she started thinking. Derek's best friend since college, Marcus Webb. They had been roommates, groomsmen at each other's weddings, inseparable for 15 years. Marcus used to come to dinner every Sunday. He stopped coming when Claire got pregnant. She had always wondered why. Now she was going to find out. Claire found Marcus at a bar near his office. He was nursing a whiskey, alone, staring at a television he was not really watching. She sat down beside him. "Claire?" His face went pale. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you about Derek." "I cannot get involved." Marcus signaled the bartender for another drink. "This is between you two. He left me dying in a hospital." Claire kept her voice steady. "He stole my identity to create millions in debt. He is using my babies as pawns. And you know things, Marcus. I know you do." Marcus would not meet her eyes. Claire leaned closer. "I am not asking you to testify. I am not asking you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. I am just asking you to tell me the truth. After 15 years of Sunday dinners, after holding my hand at my baby shower, after telling me I was the best thing that ever happened to Derek, you owe me the truth." The silence stretched between them. Finally, Marcus downed his whiskey in one gulp. "He told me everything." Marcus's voice was barely audible. Laughed about it, actually. How easy it was to forge your signature. How he had been moving money for over a year. How by the time you figured it out, you would be too broke and too broken to fight back. Claire's phone was already recording. Single-party consent state. "He said you were perfect," Marcus continued, staring at the bar. Trusting, naive. Said the pregnancy was useful because it made you too tired to notice anything. Said once the twins were born, you would be so overwhelmed that he could finish draining the accounts and disappear before you even realized he was gone. And Vanessa? She was supposed to be temporary. Marcus laughed bitterly, but she got pregnant, and Derek panicked. He has been playing both of you for almost 2 years, promising each of you that the other does not matter. Did he ever love me? Marcus finally looked at her. "I do not think Derek loves anyone. I do not think he knows how. He just knows how to make people feel like he does." Claire saved the recording. 3 days later, she was back in court. Patty played the recording. Derek's own best friend describing the fraud in detail. The forged signatures, the stolen money, the deliberate destruction. Marcus confirmed everything on the stand. The judge reversed the custody order. Sole custody to Claire, pending investigation of Derek's financial crimes. Claire walked out of the courthouse. She did not celebrate. She knew Derek too well. This was not over. 48 hours later, she picked up the twins from daycare. The staff seemed nervous. Mrs. Mitchell, "A man came by earlier, said he was a family friend. We did not let him in, but what?" "He took pictures through the window of Grace and Henry, and he left this, an envelope. Inside, photographs of her sleeping babies, and a typed note. Sole custody does not mean safety. I have friends everywhere. Daycare workers, neighbors, even that nice nurse at the pediatrician's office. You cannot protect them 24/7, but I can reach them whenever I want. Drop the divorce, give me joint custody, or watch what happens next." Claire's hands shook so badly she dropped the photographs. As she called Patty, "Can we get him arrested for this? It is not signed. We cannot prove he sent it. And without proof, the police cannot act. So he wins? He threatens my children and he just wins? No." Patty's voice was steel. "He does not win. But we need to be smarter. We need to catch him red-handed. And for that, we need help. What kind of help? The kind that comes from women who have survived men exactly like Derek." The support group met in a church basement every Thursday night. Survivors of narcissistic abuse, 12 women in folding chairs, sharing stories that sounded impossibly similar. They had all married, charming men who turned into monsters. They had all been isolated, gaslit, financially controlled. They had all been told they were crazy, dramatic, too sensitive. And they had all survived. Claire shared her story: the abandoned pregnancy, the 31 unanswered calls, the champagne toast while she died, the stolen money and forged signatures, the ongoing custody battle. When she finished, a woman in the back stood up. Janet Morrison, 52, a school teacher with kind eyes and silver streaks in her dark hair. She had divorced a narcissist 15 years ago. "Honey, I know exactly what you are going through." Janet's voice was warm but fierce. "And I want you to know something. They always slip up. Always. Their ego is their weakness. We just have to be ready when it happens." After the meeting, Janet approached Claire privately. "I did not want to say this in front of everyone, but I know Vanessa Harper. She was my daughter's college roommate." Claire's heart raced. "I can talk to her, woman to woman. Whatever Derek has on her, we can figure it out together." A week later, Claire sat across from Vanessa in a quiet park, Janet beside her. Neutral territory. Vanessa looked terrible, 9 months pregnant now, dark circles under her eyes, trembling hands. "You do not understand," Vanessa whispered. "What Derek has on me would destroy my career, my family, everything." "Tell me," Claire said. "Whatever it is, tell me. Because right now, Derek controls you with fear. The only way out is through." Vanessa broke down. The truth emerged in fragments. When she was young, Vanessa had made a mistake. Desperate for money, she had posed for photographs she regretted. Derek had found them somehow, threatened to release them to her conservative family, her employer, everyone she knew. "But here's what Vanessa does not know," Janet said gently. "Those photographs were taken when she was a minor. She lied about her age to the photographer." The room went silent. "Which means," Claire realized slowly, "those photographs are child exploitation material, which means anyone who possesses or distributes them, including Derek, is committing a federal crime." Vanessa stared at her. "What?" "He cannot release those photographs without incriminating himself." Claire took Vanessa's hand. "Report him to the FBI. He made you feel like you had no power, but the law is on your side. You are not trapped. You never were. You are helping me." Vanessa's voice cracked. "After everything I did to you, you did not do anything to me. Derek did. And now we are going to do something to him." Janet leaned forward. Together. Claire's army assembled over the following weeks. Becca provided hospital documentation from the night Derek abandoned Claire. Patty coordinated with federal prosecutors investigating the fraud. Janet rallied the survivor network, connecting Claire with resources and support. Vanessa, finally free from Derek's blackmail, began gathering evidence from the inside. Dr. Sarah Coleman, though she could not testify directly, provided a psychological profile that helped them predict Derek's moves. And Nathan Cole, in his supporting role, provided resources when Claire asked for them, never pushing, never taking control. This was Claire's fight. She was just allowing others to help. Becca looked around Claire's small apartment at the team assembled there. "We are like the Avengers. But for destroying mediocre men," Janet smiled. "I prefer Justice League of X's." Patty checked her watch. "I am billing you all for this meeting." Everyone stared at her. "That was a joke." Patty almost smiled. "Mostly. The strategy was simple. Make Derek think he was winning." Claire leaked information through Marcus. She was running out of money. Her lawyer had quit. She was considering dropping the divorce and taking Derek back. Derek took the bait immediately. "I knew she would break," he told Marcus over drinks, not knowing Marcus was recording everything now. "She is nothing without me. By Christmas, she will be begging me to come home." He got sloppy, started bragging, started leaving trails. Vanessa, now cooperating fully, provided access to Derek's email accounts. A friend in IT helped them recover deleted files, through legal discovery subpoenas. What they found was worse than Claire had imagined. Emails to his offshore banker detailing exactly how he had forged Claire's signatures. Text messages to Margaret celebrating Phase 1 when he first accessed Claire's identity. Voice memos where Derek had literally recorded himself bragging about destroying Claire before she knew what hit her. And the most damning piece of all, a draft email to his lawyer from 6 months ago. Make sure Claire gets nothing in the divorce. By the time we are done, she will be so deep in debt, she will be lucky to keep the clothes on her back. I have already laid the groundwork. The pregnancy was useful for that. She is too emotional to notice anything right now. He had used her pregnancy, the pregnancy with his children, as a distraction while he robbed her blind. Claire read the email 3 times. Each reading made her angrier. We have him, Patty said. We have everything we need. Vanessa went into labor the same week as the final custody hearing. From the hospital, she recorded a video testimony, backup in case she could not appear in person. But she was determined to be there. Against medical advice, she checked herself out 12 hours after giving birth. I spent a year helping him destroy your life, she told Claire. The least I can do is spend one day helping you take it back. The night before the hearing, Claire sat alone with her twins. Grace and Henry were 5 months old now, growing stronger every day, learning to smile, to laugh, to reach for their mother's face. They had no idea what their parents were going through. No idea that their futures hung in the balance. Claire held them close. Tomorrow we find out if we win, she whispered. But I need you to know something. No matter what happens, I will never stop fighting for you. I will never abandon you. I will never choose champagne over your lives. Grace grabbed her finger and held on tight. But Henry yawned and fell asleep against her chest. And Claire felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The courtroom was packed. The case had drawn media attention. Pregnant wife left for dead while husband celebrated with mistress. The headline had gone viral. Cameras lined the hallway. Reporters shouted questions. Claire walked in with her head high. Derek sat at the defendant's table in an expensive suit, looking confident. He smiled at the judge, at the jury, at everyone except Claire. He still thought he was going to win. Patty presented the evidence systematically. Bank records showing theft, voice recordings of Derek bragging about destroying his wife, expert testimony on narcissistic abuse patterns. Medical records from the night Claire nearly died, phone logs showing 31 unanswered calls from the hospital. Derek's lawyer tried to spin it. A miscommunication, he argued. Mr. Mitchell was under stress. His phone was on silent. Patty pounced. For 6 hours? While his pregnant wife died and his babies fought for their lives, his phone was on silent for 6 hours? The defense had no answer. Claire took the stand next. Mrs. Mitchell, Patty said gently, can you describe the moment you realized your husband was not coming to the hospital? Claire looked directly at Derek. First time she had made eye contact since the ordeal began. Call number 15, her voice was steady. That is when I stopped hoping and started understanding. My husband was not asleep. His phone was not dead. He was choosing to let me die. She described everything, the fear, the pain, the moment her heart stopped, the sound of her twins' first cries, which she heard through a medicated haze, alone, without the man who had promised to love and cherish her. I had forgiven a lot in our marriage, Claire continued. His temper, his criticism, the way he made me feel small. I told myself that was what marriage was. Compromise. But letting me die while he drank champagne? That is not something you compromise on. That is something you survive. And then you make sure it never happens to anyone else. The courtroom was silent. If any woman listening to this sees herself in my story, Claire said, still looking at Derek, I want you to know something. It was not your fault. You are not crazy. and you can survive. I did. Document everything. Build your team. And never ever trust a man who makes you feel like you are too much when you are asking for the bare minimum, Vanessa testified next. Still weak from childbirth, but fierce, she walked to the stand with her head held high. Derek told me his wife was abusive, Vanessa began, controlling, that she had trapped him with the pregnancy. I believed him because I wanted to, because believing him was easier than seeing the truth. She detailed the manipulation, the lies, the threats. When I found out Claire nearly died while we were celebrating, I wanted to vomit. And then I wanted to disappear. But Claire, the woman I helped destroy, gave me a choice. Help take him down or stay trapped forever. I chose freedom, and I hope every woman watching chooses the same. Finally, Derek took the stand, against his lawyer's advice. His ego would not let him stay silent. He started smooth, charming, the mask everyone had seen at dinner parties for years. But Patty was prepared. Mr. Mitchell, you stated you were unaware your wife was in medical distress. But we have phone records showing 31 calls from County General Hospital that night. Are you saying you missed all of them? My phone was on silent. For 6 hours? I was dealing with work stress. Work stress that required champagne and a $400 dinner at Chateau Laurent? The mask slipped. Derek's jaw tightened. Patty pressed harder. Played the voice recordings, Derek's own voice bragging about destroying Claire before she knew what hit her. Mr. Mitchell, is that your voice? Derek's face went white, then red. That is taken out of context. In what context is, I am going to leave her so deep in debt she cannot afford a lawyer acceptable, Derek snapped. Years of careful control crumbled in seconds. She drove me to it. His voice rose. She was always nagging, always demanding, always making me feel like the bad guy when she is the one who... Who what, Mr. Mitchell? Patty's voice was ice. Almost died giving birth to your children while you ignored her calls? I do not owe her anything. The words rang through the silent courtroom. Derek realized what he had said, tried to take it back. But it was too late. The jury had seen the mask fall. They had seen the monster underneath. Judge Morrison delivered the verdict the following morning. The courtroom was even more packed than the day before. Word had spread about Derek's meltdown. Everyone wanted to see what happened next. In my 30 years on this bench, Judge Morrison began, I have seen many custody cases, many divorces, many people at their worst, but I have rarely seen such calculated, deliberate cruelty as what Mr. Mitchell has perpetrated against his wife and children. Derek sat motionless at the defendant's table. His lawyer had given up trying to salvage anything. The evidence presented shows a pattern of systematic abuse. Judge Morrison's voice was hard. Financial manipulation, identity theft, emotional cruelty, and most damning of all, the deliberate abandonment of a dying woman and her unborn children. The ruling came down like a hammer. Sole legal and physical custody to Claire Mitchell. Derek would receive no unsupervised visitation until completion of psychiatric evaluation and mandatory parenting classes, $1.8 million in damages for financial fraud. Full restitution of all stolen assets. Referral to federal prosecutors for wire fraud and identity theft charges. Derek's lawyer objected. Derek tried to speak. Judge Morrison cut him off. Mr. Mitchell, you built your defense on the premise that your wife was unstable. What I have seen here today is a woman of extraordinary stability, one who endured your abuse, your theft, your abandonment, and still had the strength to protect her children and seek justice. That is not instability, that is steel. You would do well to learn the difference, gavel down. Claire did not cry, did not celebrate, did not even smile. She simply stood up, thanked her lawyer, and walked out of the courtroom. Becca was waiting in the hallway. She grabbed Claire in a fierce hug. "You did it. You actually did it. We did it." Claire hugged her back. "All of us." Nathan was there too, standing at a respectful distance. He nodded at Claire. She nodded back. No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, just quiet acknowledgement of what they had accomplished together. 6 months later, Derek Mitchell was serving 18 months in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. His mother, Margaret, had been named as a co-conspirator. She was facing her own charges. The house that Derek had mortgaged fraudulently was sold. The proceeds went to Claire as part of the restitution. Vanessa had moved away with her daughter. She and Claire texted sometimes, not friends exactly, but survivors who understood each other. Claire used the damage award to start her own business. A marketing consultancy she had dreamed about for years. The dream Derek had always told her was too risky. Year 1 revenue, $350,000 and growing. The twins were thriving, walking now, talking, calling Nathan Nate because they could not quite manage the full name. And Claire was healing, not healed. She knew better than to think she was completely recovered from years of narcissistic abuse, but healing, getting stronger every day. One evening, she stood at her kitchen window, watching Grace and Henry play in the backyard. Nathan sat with them, building towers out of blocks and deliberately making them unstable so the twins could knock them down and shriek with laughter. Becca arrived with wine. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Claire said. "That night in the hospital, when my heart stopped, I was so scared, not of dying, of leaving them, of Grace and Henry, never knowing I fought for them. They will know." Becca handed her a glass. "You will tell them about the woman who survived, who built a life, who showed them what strength looks like. I used to think strength meant enduring, staying quiet, making peace. And now," Claire watched her children laugh, "now I know strength means choosing yourself, even when everyone tells you you are selfish, even when it is terrifying, even when you are alone. You were never alone. I know, but I had to learn I could be, that I could survive on my own before I let anyone help me." Nathan looked up from the block tower and caught Claire's eye through the window. He smiled. She smiled back. Not a fairy tale ending. Something better. A real one. 1 year after the trial, Claire gave a TEDx talk. Surviving Narcissistic Abuse. The playbook no one gave me. She stood on that stage and told her story to a live audience of 2,000 people. Millions more would watch online. She talked about the 31 unanswered calls, the champagne toast while she died, the forged signatures and stolen money, the custody battle that nearly broke her, but mostly, she talked about what she learned. "If you are watching this, and you see yourself in my story," Claire said, looking directly into the camera, "I want you to know one thing. You do not have to wait for a billionaire to save you. You do not need a perfect support system. You just need one thing. The decision to choose yourself. Start small. One document hidden. One secret bank account with $50. One phone call to a lawyer, even if you cannot afford one yet. Build your escape route before you need it, because you deserve a life that does not hurt, and you are the only one who can give it to yourself." The video went viral. 4 million views in the first week. Comments from women around the world saying, "This is my story and you made me believe I could leave." Claire published a book, donated half the proceeds to domestic violence organizations. At the book launch party, Becca cornered her with champagne. "So, let me get this straight. You nearly died, lost everything, rebuilt your life, rabits, wrote a bestseller, and your ex-husband is in prison. What is next?" Claire raised her glass. "Honestly, I was thinking about taking a nap. I hear those are nice." Everyone laughed. Later that night, Nathan found her on the balcony. "I have a question," he said. Claire already knew what it was. He had proposed 6 months ago. She had said, "Ask me again in a year." "Ask me," she said. "Claire Mitchell." Nathan took her hand. "Will you marry me? Not because you need me, because you do not, but because you choose me, because I choose you, because I want to spend the rest of my life watching you be extraordinary." Claire thought about everything that had brought her here. The betrayal, the near-death, the custody battle, the moments when she thought she would never survive. She thought about Grace and Henry, asleep upstairs, her babies who had fought their way into the world and who would grow up knowing their mother was a fighter too. She thought about Derek, sitting in a prison cell, finally facing consequences for the first time in his life. And she thought about herself. Not the Claire who had let Derek diminish her, not the Claire who had stayed silent to keep the peace, but this new Claire, the one who had burned down her old life and built something beautiful from the ashes. "Yes," she said, "I choose you." Nathan kissed her. When they finally pulled apart, Claire said, "But I am keeping my name," Nathan smiled. "I would not have it any other way." That night, alone in her office, after everyone had gone home, Claire opened her laptop. An email notification popped up. From the prison email system, Derek. "Claire, I have had time to think. I was wrong about everything. I am getting help. I know I do not deserve forgiveness. But I hope someday we can talk. I want to be in the twins' lives. I want to prove I have changed." Claire stared at the message for a long time. She thought about what she would tell Grace and Henry when they were old enough to ask about their father, about the man who had left them to die, about the man who had tried to destroy their mother. She would tell them the truth, all of it, and she would tell them what she had learned. Some people cannot change. Some apologies come too late. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. She clicked. Block sender, closed the laptop, walked to the twins' room, watched them sleep. Grace clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Henry sprawled across the mattress like he was trying to take up as much space as possible. "Some things do not deserve a second chapter," she whispered. Then she went to bed. In the morning, there would be a business to run, a book tour to prepare for, a wedding to plan, 2 children to raise. In the morning, Claire Mitchell would wake up and build another day of the life she had fought for. But for now, she slept. And for the first time in years, she did not dream of drowning. She dreamed of flying. If you have ever felt trapped, if you have ever doubted yourself, if you have ever wondered whether you were strong enough to start over, this story is for you. Stay until the end. The final twist will leave you speechless. And if this story touches your heart, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your story, your strength. Hit that like button if you believe women deserve better. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of survival, justice, and second chances. Now, let us begin. Closing disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every word was crafted with purpose. To entertain, to inspire, and to remind you that no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward.